we work a lot with local stakeholder and also the government level to come up with these indicators. So, and once we know what to measure, so we use our national database that we also running. Not only that, we also ask the local people who have direct impact on that, how do you feel about this situation? And we classify the risk into different components: hazard, exposure, vulnerability. So we give some score and numbers based on the existing information we have. Not only that, we also predict what will be the next degree of the problem in the future. So this is the work that we did, and I will go to the next one, the last one. So we these are the risk map. Well, the risk map is in the right hand side, the red one. However, the risk is a composition of hazard in the blue maps, exposure, and also vulnerability. So now they can compare between different areas of the basin, that if we are talking about the hazard, where will be the worst, the same hazard, where will be we can compare by this number. So we normalized the result in the way that they can compare, so that the work basin planner can identify some priorities area or activities exactly. And that is to answer the first question to Mr. Pongsak. But for you, we need to go back to this one. So there are half of them, they are ecosystem or nature related indicators that people can dive into those numbers and see that if my area have a score in the forest is better than the other area or not. So these are something that can link to the EBA measures in the future. So we are working up, backward and forward to make sure that all these two will fit with the river basin planning. So this will be my first round for this second question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And yeah, I think that leads us direct into Katie's input. Because so our idea is also that based then on the climate risk and vulnerability assessments that would be part of these 5-year revision cycles of the river basin master plans in Thailand, the CRVAs are done, and then based on the results of these assessments, of course, suitable adaptation measures can be identified and prioritized. And why we were also we were promoting climate change adaptation and the integration of climate change adaptation in general, but also looking specifically at ecosystem-based adaptation measures, which should ideally be part of the overall adaptation strategy and project action, so to say. And then that's where Katie comes in.
Yeah, thanks everyone. You set it up for me very nicely. So yeah, IUCN was tasked with what we initially thought was a relatively straightforward task of developing an EBA guidebook. And the more we thought about it, the more we realized it was a lot more challenging than we initially thought, because the EBA guidebook really had to convince people who were engineers, who were water engineers, who immediately when they see a problem thought of a concrete solution using gray infrastructure. So in a relatively short document, we needed to convince them that maybe not ecosystem-based adaptation can't always have the answers, but can it be part of the solutions? You know, it can be an option that they can reach for, maybe in hybrid, in tandem with other things, and just having them think a bit bigger. So that was a big task. And as we looked through the literature, there were a lot of guidebooks on EBA, maybe for a particular ecosystem, or EBA for a particular country, but none designed specifically for one sector for one country. So it's a very specific guidebook, but as for the question earlier, I think it can be applied in the region more widely. But what we ended up coming up with was kind of maybe a two-part component. So first is the guidebook itself, which has a bit of an introduction, again, not assuming that these engineers really understand the importance of EBA or how it can potentially work in tandem with other solutions, explaining the context, explaining the different policies that can support EBA in Thailand. And then moving into part 2, which was an 8-step process overall, that kind of walks them through the practicalities of what do you need to do. So you need to have this meeting with the stakeholders. Who do you need in the room? And then connecting that to some forms that really walk them through each line of information, which of course is flexible, but we wanted to make sure it was something that was usable by the end of it. We didn't want it to be a 300-page document of text that no one was going to read. We kind of thought the shorter it is, the more efficient it can be and the more likely it is to be used, which is still a let's see, but hopefully it will be used. So the 8 steps really kind of tried to encapsulate the whole TGCP water project, which is a big undertaking, but the steps really rely on the information from the other components that have already been introduced. So we use the information from the climate risk vulnerability assessment to help understand what the potential vision could be as we move forward. And then it reaches to another component, which we're not hearing about today, which is the EBA Code of Practice. So that really gives you concrete interventions, tells you exactly what you can do, how many trees you need, what steps you need to take to implement this specific intervention. So it really kind of tries to tie it all together and then brings in, of course, the monitoring and evaluation and the policy and mainstreaming components as well. So it was a big task, but I think with a lot of support from all of our partners and with a lot of feedback from the government, in the end we arrived at a balanced document. It can always have more information, but we tried to link to outside documents if they wanted more information on, for example, specific ecosystem service tools, because that wasn't the focus of this specific exercise. But linking them to those, so those resources were available, but then also having them have the big picture in a relatively concise document.
Thank you, and I think you summarized that also very nicely. I was just thinking, maybe can you give an example of one or two of these forms that you were referring to? So, because I think that makes it also more tangible for the audience here.
Yeah, sure. So maybe the easiest one to explain is once you've got the data from the CRVA, you've got the ecosystem services assessment, so you understand which components of the ecosystems the communities rely on the most. Then we bring them to a visioning section. So the form kind of says, you know, where are you now? What are the challenges you're facing? What are the risks and vulnerabilities at the site? Where do you want to be in 20 years, 30 years? Pick your timeline. And then how do you think you could get there? So if you're facing flooding, what ecosystems around can you potentially restore, conserve, or manage more efficiently to help reduce that flooding in the future? So it is relatively straightforward. It's really just kind of a fill-in-the-blank exercise. But in that form, we also give them, you know, an example of a potential agenda for the meeting. You know, welcome the guests, introduce people, review the ecosystem services assessment, review the CRVA, and then walk through that process of here's 30 minutes of visioning where you are and where you want to be and how you can break up those stakeholder groups. So the idea is they shouldn't, if we've done it correctly, they shouldn't have too many questions on how they go through this process.
Right. I think it was very much about also guiding the process and thinking about different aspects to consider while you're on that journey. So now the TGCP water is ending. We're gonna have all of these publications and guidances and forms ready, also shareable soon. But now that we have done all of this work and the project ends, what do you think is needed so that this kind of process of integrating adaptation into the river basin plans and into the planning processes on the national level, what do you think is needed, and where do we maybe see still some gaps and challenges?
Thank you, Lisa. It's a very big question because I think now we need the linkage from the top down to bottom up, because of course you know that normally the design project in our country normally based on the top down. It's mean that from the Bangkok and we decide for the other river basin. But now what we found from this project is that when we talk with the river basin committee, normally it consists of the government agency and some representative from the local people in agricultural sector, manufacturing sector, and service sector. And we have the local administrative level also. That's why when we try to to talk with them in that time that we try to have the workshop together. I think they the first question they asked about how to make the water resource management by themselves. Because they no problem. And sometimes for example, at the flood that our team said, some area the flood is not problem. For example, they said that of course in urban area is problem, but in rural area somebody said that farmers say that okay, during flood season I can make more income from the fishery, something like that. And sometimes the solution from the central government is like the very strong and very, it's something like the gray structure, and it's not flexible for them. But if they have something like the eco-based system, actually when we talk with them about the eco-based system, they think what is that? But when we talk about the local wisdom, it's same. Because in Thailand, when we talk about the monkey chick, is the local wisdom. Maybe we call it different name in English, but the local people understand this one. That's why I think now we have the something like gap how to link together, and decentralization process should be share some resource from the central government. I mean the 100% share. For example, share some knowledge, and we share some the platform that the local people can manage by themselves. Of course, we don't say no for the gray structure. I think we should combine together from the gray structure, existing structure, and green structure, but how to let the people in the local area make decision by themselves. And based on our experience, M&E, monitor and evaluation process, is the one gap also. Because normally, you know, when we construct something, when we construct and when we got the reservoir, it's finished. But no, for them, it's not finished, because they have to see that what happened if we decide for this one, and next 70 years, no water, no inflow. And this is a problem. You invest a lot, but when you invest, you construct, you go back to your office, but I have to stay with this. How to survive with something like this, with the climate change impact in the future. This is the idea that everything that we try to do, we have to communicate in the suitable way. And if they know, in the future they will manage by themselves. And I think this is a key indicator that our idea is successful because they will continue by themselves. I think this is the idea that how to do this. This is a gap that how to link from the central to the local. I think this is the key message. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think, I mean, part of the idea was also to kind of translate or transfer the main entry point to the river basins and this area-based approach, basically. And thank you for bringing up M&E. I think that's also very important, and specifically on EBA M&E, we don't have a representative as such in the room, but we were actually also working and piloting M&E methodologies for EBA measures. So we will also have technical papers by Thai universities who looked at living weirs, the kind of bamboo constructions to slow down water flows, and flood retention areas, and I've also a synthesis paper by UNEP WCMC that we'll be publishing soon. So yeah, we also have that part integrated. Coming back to Dr. Sucharet, so so
Next.
you had this very complex undertaking also of the CRVA guidance. So can you tell us a little bit more about the challenges maybe, and how you think it will also come into implementation and hopefully then really also be integrated and anchored in the Thai system?
Right. Thank you for that. And well, I see that can be the next thing that we can do. Dr. Pongsak mentioned about bottom-up, top-down approach. In the tools, we are also thinking about upscaling and downscaling. Well, the tools we develop, we pick only 2 river basins in Thailand. Totally, we have 22. So definitely, we will upscale this one to make this concept to be used in other river basin based on the existing approach and practice that we have, so that we move into that direction for upscaling. For the downscaling, during the project period, we work with local stakeholders, and they complain that this is too not so detailed. I want more details. So they really buy in that kind of, they want to know the climate information, but not this scale. I need what will happen in my town, in my communities. So this is another challenge, because the climate information is always a bigger scale. we can't really downscale that information into their local areas. So this is one challenge that we need to take into account, how to downscale that climate information, and also the impact that might occur in the future, so that they know exactly what to do. Maybe EBA, or maybe green infrastructure, maybe blue or green infrastructure. That kind of information that we need to do. For upscaling and downscaling, that will definitely do that. For the implementation, well, one of the feedback we got from the user is that they know the area very well, and they flag that the data in my system is not right. It is wrong. And I'm happy that we are wrong, because they feel that engagement is already there, because they told us about this problem, and we investigate that, and when we found that it is really not correct, and we thank them for improving our system, and the system itself improving, because we have a very short time. I need to say that during the COVID time, we have a very limited time to develop this tool. So the tool is not 100% correct. But once this kind of process that we work with them, so the tool itself improving. So I think this is another thing that I would like to mention about the process that we work with them, how to improve the tools. The more you use, the more accurate of the tools that will be in the future. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's also a very good point that you made. I think many of the efforts we made now are an initial step. So also some of the products that Kuntuk mentioned earlier, I think they are really seen as an initial step. We also part of them, all of them we hand over to our partners, and they are not maybe finished for all times, right? They need improvement. They are a first guidance. They can and need to be adapted to the Thai system and to the use cases. And yeah, so I think thank you for bringing that up. Katie, EBA. We definitely also have the time frame problem there, right? And how fast, and then also how countable are the benefits. So what would you say for the whole process of EBA implementation and planning and implementation? Where would you see some needs and also gaps in the current where we are at the moment?
I think there's a few, let's say, like gaps and opportunities. I think there's a huge potential to take a similar guidebook like this and develop a guidebook for example, for the agriculture sector, to get everyone, all these different ministries thinking about, okay, maybe not always EBA, but how do we integrate EBA more often into our work, and how do we think about that as something that's a viable option? So I think that's really important. And I think going back to the idea of monitoring and evaluation and needing to strengthen that, we've done all of this work in this project, but now we really need to implement. We really need to have the numbers, because when we're talking to engineers and we're trying to convince them that maybe you don't need a dam here, maybe we can restore the forest or the wetland upstream, they can say, well, if we make the dam, we'll have this much water for this much time until we decide to let go. So how do you compete with that, right? So we need to collect that data from Thailand, from Laos, from Vietnam, from the region, so we have convincing numbers that we can turn around and then say, well, here's why. Not only do you have more water, you have more access to fisheries, you have more access to non-timber fish products, you have more cultural benefits. So we need to draw on that, and we need to show them that there are really multiple benefits that are provided. And once we have those, and if we have agencies like ONWR implementing them, then we can step out of the picture. Then ONWR can turn to their colleagues in other ministries and other departments and say, look, this worked for us, maybe you should give it a shot. And then it's less us convincing and more peer-to-peer learning. So I think that's really important. And I think maybe the final, well, there's many more obstacles, but maybe a really important obstacle and a really good example from Bangkok is we really need to review our policies and make sure they're cohesive and that they're not contradicting each other. So I think a perfect example that I've seen recently is the new Benjikiti Forest Park here in Bangkok. Beautiful park designed to help flood retention, provides freshwater habitat, trees, beautiful forests, recreational benefits, an excellent example of urban ecosystem-based adaptation. Award-winning, I would say. I wasn't involved, so whoever was, congratulations. At the same time, Bangkok passed a rule, a new law where unused land is getting taxed at a higher rate. So to avoid those tax implications, people are filling in the wetlands that they have that have just been sitting vacant and been providing all of these ecosystem services, this water retention, this climate cooling components. So people are filling those in. It's directly contradicting the work that's being done in this forest park. So we need to harmonize these policies and make sure that they're all moving in the same direction. They're all moving to help climate change adaptation and address water challenges as we move towards the future. Leave it there.
Yes, I mean, I asked a big question, but that was maybe even a bigger challenge that you came up with there. Okay, I think maybe going into the last round, and then we would also be happy to engage more with the participants. So based on the work that you've done over the past years or months in this topic, what do you think are also some takeaways that people working in maybe also in other countries, but that are working in this complex of water, climate change, maybe also ecosystem-based adaptation, can take away for example, these planning processes?
Okay, I think I would like to share some experience, and I think the thing that we found is that I think we cannot make the one shirt and fit for all. Even in Thailand, we test for the 2 river basin. Of course, we cannot copy from this one and use in the Laos PDR, or even the same culture, same weather, same area, but of course it's different. But the guidebook that we try to do, I think we make it quite general. General means that we try to see the whole picture, and we try to learn from what happened in the past. What is our mistake, and how to add something like this to use with the local citizen. I think this is the thing that we found, and we talk a lot with the local people, and I think this should be the one guidebook to show. But again, you cannot copy and paste. But at least you know that what happened from our experience. Even in Thailand, 2 river basin, but different. And this is our message. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Just one
Yes.
slide to show. We were talking about the dashboard, so this is it. Well, just to give you, to invite you to have a look. So this is our products that River Basin Planner can play with the numbers and the data we have. So you are welcome to scan that one. It is developed by some Microsoft Power BI. So it's map interface that you can see the score and also the result from our research, our study. Thank you.
Okay, over to Katie.
What was the question now?
I had to
How do we bring this forward?
I was just thinking about the tool, so that's why I forgot my
I
question
got
too.
distracted.
I was hoping that you still had it. The question was, what would be takeaways?
Oh, right. So the takeaways. Yeah, I think we were a relatively small part of this overall project, but I think this project really shows the power of collaboration. It must have been a headache for you guys to organize all of us and all of our different deliverables and all of the moving parts, but I think in the end it really shows the power of relying on the strengths of partners. I think no one of the groups or even the government could have done this on our own, but it really is a perfect example of how to effectively work with communities, how to work with government, how to work with academia, how to work with nonprofit everyone and bring everyone together and really create something that's kind of bigger than the sum of its parts. So for those of you who are working in other regions and looking to this, it's a large task, but I think it's not a task that needs to be done alone. And there are a lot of capacities that you can rely on if you network properly, and these events are a good opportunity to do that.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all three of you. We would now be very happy to answer any questions, and also please feel free to we'll share our contact maybe from the slides of Kuntuk's presentation, the last slide. That would be the contacts to me and Kuntuk, and I think if you agree, we are also happy to share the contacts to the colleagues. Any questions from the floor or even online if there are some?
I think one question that I'm interested in is how do you also take into account that ecosystems themselves are vulnerable to climate change?
So I would say in the EBA guidebook, for example, or maybe this is more a question for you, I'm not sure. In the EBA guidebook, we have that as one of the first steps, really understanding the climate vulnerability of the area that you're working in. So you would focus on, of course, an area that is more at risk, more vulnerable. And then throughout the process, you move towards understanding the ecosystem services and how they will be affected based on that information. And then moving to the code of practice, which is really, it's an extension of the EBA guidebook that points to, for example, particular species or particular more resilient species or trees that you could reforest, or areas that you could focus on that would be hopefully, where it's all assumptions, hopefully more resilient in the future. Do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, just a quick one. I forgot to mention one thing. We have one component called cost impact chain. This kind of what happened when we implement something and then have a feedback loop to the ecosystem or the climate. So this is something that we have, once we have this information, people or local communities start to think about what is the right measures, what will be the consequence after that. So there are also some activity for those to see the change of the cost impact. So that's one thing I forgot to mention. Thank you for bringing it up, Sandy.
Hello, I am Sophie van der Eyden and I work at the United Nations University. Thank you for your presentations. I just was wondering about the next steps, because you said the project will be finishing soon, and now that you created this guidebook, if I understood correctly, you are going to put the guidelines online. Are there other actions that you plan to implement to make sure the guidebook can be known by the different stakeholders? Maybe could you tell a bit more about that? And also I had the question because you said it was important to collect data now to prove the effectivity of those solutions. Is there also something that is planned for this, or? Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, maybe first on the first question. So I think for kind of international sharing, yes, we were working on having a pool where all of these resources are available. By the way, Panorama Solutions, if you Google there, that's also a database, so to say, where many of these EBA solutions, but also for other topics, are available. That's an international platform. That's also a good entry point if you're looking for things, and we will also upload our things there. But I think at the same time, so we've been working very closely with our partners, ONWR, but also other government agencies in Thailand and on different levels. So they have been part of the process, and they have, they are basically, the products are with them already. And we did also try and make sure that these guidances are aligned to their policy processes, to their planning processes. So unfortunately, we will not be working directly with the water sector anymore as GIZ and as in IKI at the moment. But there are some follow-on projects, and I will hand over to you in a moment, that will work on agriculture and water. There's a GCF project that's starting that will also work in one of the river basins, in Yom River Basin, also on EBA. There will be a project implemented by IUCN on urban EBA, and we are also working on climate change and biodiversity as GIZ with Thai partners, especially the Environment ONEP Environment Office. So water will be still part of the picture, unfortunately not a direct partner as such anymore. As I said, many of the products are in their hands, and they are in Thai, and they have been quite widely discussed and distributed. Katie.
Yeah, good question. It's always important to know where we're going next. So as Lisa said, we have a project on urban ecosystem-based adaptation, and we're using the guidebook as kind of a bit of a roadmap. As you said, they're all still kind of draft documents. We're finalizing them, but we're looking for feedback. So we'll try to pilot it through this next project, through this urban project, which will focus in Thailand. We also have an upcoming project from the Adaptation Fund as well as IUCN, working in northeastern Thailand and the Mekong Delta in Vietnam. So we'll also be looking at the EBA guidebook for that. Obviously in Vietnam, not in the Thai context, but still very much following this process of 8 steps, understanding the climate risks, understanding the potential solutions, envisioning, and following it up with policy and mainstreaming. And then maybe in terms of your question on data collection, as Lisa said, it's with the government now. So we hope that they don't start implementing and then just say, okay, it's done. They hope that they go to the next step and they do all the monitoring and evaluation, and that they do share it through policy and reach out to us. I think through this project, at least as IUCN, and I'm sure GIZ much, much more than us, has really developed quite a strong relationship with the government counterparts. So we hope that they'll reach out to us if something isn't clear, that we can support them with, and then again, helping them share them in more international forums.
Yes, and I would like to add just one sentence on that and pass over, and I think we have another 2 minutes left. So what I also wanted to highlight is, so for example, we work with Hydroinformatics Institute, which is a Thai organization. So basically the knowledge and know-how also for the climate risk and vulnerability assessments are there now. That's why we also focused on giving these kind of guidance documents rather than focusing very much on the assessments of the pilot sites as such. So we hope that all of this is replicable in a way, and we did put a lot of emphasis on institutional capacity building. So we had a very broad capacity building program. We will have, I don't know if you've heard about this, a Tingi learning platform. I don't know if it's a GIZ hosted platform, but it's definitely an e-learning platform which is open to external users. As I said, we kind of work with HII, so they are the people who have the know-how now on CRVA and Thailand's river basins. Experts like Dr. Pong Sak, they work very closely with the government agencies. So we hope, of course, also that the climate agenda is as such personally mainstreamed into the expert knowledge, and I hope that it also lives on as such. Maybe one last, if we are granted one more minute, I think we have a few more minutes. Then over to
quick one. So, well, when we finish this project, we're also thinking about what we do next to maintain the data. So we think that in the next 5 or 6 years, if we update information, we might get a new risk map. And we hope that those risk areas will get, shorter or smaller, so that it will be a good indicator for the government in the future that those EBA or maybe gray structure that they implement over the past 5 years is actually showing some result. So this is something that we definitely want to update this system once they have reached their time to update that one. So we think about updating this system as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think a lot is happening actually in Thailand now in terms of climate change, and there's also work with the Thai meteorological department and WMO, for example. This will also be a project. They will work on climate information, climate services. This is also an ICI-funded project. So I think ONEP, the Environment Ministry, is also working on this kind of risk mapping. So I think there will be a lot of elements coming together gradually that maybe haven't grown quite together yet, but I think a lot is happening at the moment, and hopefully on a good way. So I would like to say thank you to the panelists, thank you very much also for the cooperation, and then this is kind of also our closing a little bit, and yeah, you invited also to come next week. Thank you, Kuntuk, for extending that invitation. So our closing event will be next week, 8th of December, in the morning, I think 8 or 9 to lunchtime in the Centaur Central World. So I think easily available, reachable also by BTS. Thank you very much for coming and for listening and for your questions. Thank you and have a good Friday evening.